This is Pete Fletzer. On this episode of Around the Galaxy, we're talking to host, actress, producer, and podcaster Catrina Dennis.
There is something that will make someone happy in Star Wars, and it may not be the same thing as you or me. What more could we ask for?
You're listening to Around the Galaxy.
Welcome to episode number 129 of Around the Galaxy, the Star Wars fan talk show. I am your host, Pete Fletzer. Thank you so much for joining us this week. If this is your first visit with Around the Galaxy, welcome aboard. So glad you're with us. What took you so long? Where have you been? We're so glad to have you. Before you get started on the show, do me a favor, hit the subscribe button on whatever podcast outlet you're using to listen to this show, because not only do you get Around the Galaxy, the Star Wars fan talk show every Tuesday, but on every Saturday morning we offer you up a little 5-minute Star Wars news digest that we call Disturbances in the Force. And listen, I know you got a lot of things to do. You can't spend your whole time on Twitter and surfing the internet looking for the latest in Star Wars news. That's why I'm here. I'm doing that for you, because I care about your Star Wars experience. No, but in all seriousness, we drop this little 5-minute show every Saturday morning. Grab a coffee, check out the latest Star Wars news on Disturbances in the Force. And like I said, you do get this show every single Tuesday, where we have this amazing opportunity to talk to people and get their Star Wars story, whether it's authors or super fans or celebrities or personalities or actors. We spend an hour just sort of exploring the Star Wars journey, capturing that magic moment when two people who are Star Wars fans meet for the first time and explore what Star Wars means to them and get some insight into their Star Wars journey. And this week, I am thrilled to bring you a conversation with Catrina Dennis. Catrina is a writer. She's a host. She's an actress, producer. She's a game designer. And she has hosted and featured on networks like Syfy and NBC. She's worked with storytelling legends like Stan Lee. And she's also worked on LINE, and she's done Webtoons. This woman is a Star Wars, Star Trek, sci-fi geek supreme. She's amazing, and she's so much fun to talk to. I had so much fun talking to her. I followed her on Twitter for quite some time, finally had the opportunity to speak to her, and this conversation is just pure Star Wars joy. Such a great perspective on being a fan, and a great perspective on the Star Wars fandom, which I think we could all certainly use. Before we get started, I do want to remind you to check us out on all your social media channels, whether it's Instagram or Twitter or Facebook or TikTok. You can find us at ATGcast. You can also visit our website at atgcast.com, and you'll find links to our merch. You'll find my blog with some stories and things like that. You'll also find a link to our Patreon page at patreon.com/ATGcast, and there you can become a part of the show. And now, Catrina Dennis. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing so good. Thank you so much for such a kind introduction. I'm excited to be here because so many of my favorite people have been on this show, and so it's I'm really excited to have a conversation with you for the first time.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited that you're here, and I'm, I say it, all the time. I'm just so fortunate to be able to put together, an hour or so of just talking to people that I just find really interesting and who have an interesting Star Wars story to tell. So, Katrina, for those who aren't familiar with you, maybe give us a little bit of your background.
Well, it all started at a Star Trek convention in 1992. I actually, I've loved Star Wars my whole life. I found out about Star Wars through a Topps card at a Star Trek convention, and I saw that card pack, and it had Han and Chewie on it. I forgot exactly which like phase of cards it was, but my dad picked that up for me, and we went home and we watched his VHS of A New Hope, and it's all gone uphill from there. I think my life wouldn't be what it is without my Star Wars fandom, and I've been able to do so many cool things because of that. I got to work on the sci-fi series Looking for Leia, which was the most fun I've ever had on set. I've written for StarWars.com, the official blog. I've made like such incredible friends through this community. I've gotten to run so many interesting live streams, and now I have this great little podcast called Fight Club, where I talk about Star Wars battles from throughout the saga and how they were made or what inspired them and helped them come to be.
That's awesome. So when let's talk about Fight Club for a second. So do you focus on the actual battle in the film, and you said how it came to be, like, is that backstory? Maybe tell me a little more about that. I'm really interested in where you're going with that.
Yeah, I mean, it's less about like focusing on specific battles. Like, we do pick out episodes. Our first two, for example, have been about like specific fights and showdowns or training sessions. The first one we talked about Sabine and Kanan in Star Wars Rebels and their training session. But in the second episode, we talked about the 2D Clone Wars series and that like multi-episode battle between Anakin and Asajj. And for a future episode, I'm going to be diving into a specific fight style that we see in Solo between Kira and Dryden Voss. Yep. That is actually, because it's based on a real fight style, I am bringing in professional practitioners of that style to talk about how it or what it's like, where it came from, what its origins were, and how it's used in Star Wars versus its standard traditional practices. So Fight Club kind of came about because I've always been a fan of like martial arts. I've been a fan of like action films, alongside Star Wars. That's the kind of stuff my dad raised me on. We would go to like the Dollar Theater on Wednesdays to see like a Western or a martial arts movie. And so like I was his tomboy kid. And so because of that, I have all these memories and all these like this Criterion collection of movies in my head that we see echo throughout Star Wars so often. And so I think combining those two passions where, I love fighting and I love Star Wars, it was kind of, a no-brainer at the end of the day.
I think that's it's funny, as I've been doing this show over 2.5 years, there's certain themes that start to they kind of come and go. And one of the interesting themes that seems to have been coming up a lot recently is the fact that Star Wars is this amazing amalgamation of so many different styles of films and storytelling. And that's what makes it work for so many people. Like, for example, I almost would consider at this point, I would consider Star Wars its own genre in a way, right? In that, it's been around for 40 years. So we're coming up on its third generation, technically, if I do the math right. So, my father, I've loved it. My son, who's 8, he's all in on Star Wars. We're getting up watching Bad Batch every week. And but it's interesting because, obviously I don't know if that's what drew you into Star Wars, but that's something that you're able to focus on is the martial arts /fighting styles. What's your thoughts on maybe why Star Wars is so universal with so many different types of fans?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. It's there's something for everyone in Star Wars fandom, and there are a lot of fandoms that are like it, but there are a few comparatively to a lot of other like broader fandoms within pop culture. If you like knitting, there is a Facebook group for you with like people who knit like Star Wars cardigans and scarves and stuff. Like I think one of the things that I learned a lot about when I was working on Looking for Leia was just how broad this fandom is. And its origins started because of people's interest in fanfic, and that crossed over from the Star Trek fandom, where so many like women especially were writing fanfics. And so when they became Star Wars fans and they didn't know there would be Empire Strikes Back, their reaction was to continue the stories of Star Wars in zines that they would pass around to each other. And so that was like a very important thing for me to learn. It's like our fandom foremothers, we called them, were the people who started these like passionate projects. And that goes across the scope to like, I'm a fan and a friend of the 501st Legion, the Rebel Legion, and I love the way that people express their fandom through projects and creativity or fan fiction, or even just like talking on Twitter about breaking down like extremely minor characters with passionate vigor. I think I want to say that's where I want to go with that. There is definitely, even on like a minute level, there's a little something for everyone in Star Wars, and I think that echoes because of the range of stories there are out there, the way you consume Star Wars. Like, there's no single venue into Star Wars fandom anymore. Nobody just starts with A New Hope anymore.
Yep. Yeah, I've talked about it on my show 100 times, but I it's one of those things that, as a father of an 8-year-old boy, for me, and actually my 11-year-old daughter, I recall when The Force Awakens came out, before she saw a single frame of the movie, she saw pictures of Rey, and she was, at the time, geez, I guess it was like, what was it, 5 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
She was still in her princess mode, but she went up to her room and she made her own Rey costume before she even saw the movie. So I think that's great. And my son is all about clones. So he, like, honestly, like Luke and Kylo Ren and Anakin, he doesn't care. He loves Rex and Fives and Echo. Like, those are his guys. And that's amazing to me, because for me, of course, 7 years old, seeing Star Wars in the theater in 1977, but seeing it there, that was my entry point. And to imagine that there's two more completely different entry points in my house is pretty wild. And like, there's so much like commitment to those pieces of Star Wars for them that it's wild to me that the rest of it is backstory, versus, like, to me, Clone Wars is all backstory. And to him, the prequels are just, more live action versions of his favorite guys. So
exactly. Yeah. And again, like, my nieces too, as soon as Forces of Destiny came out, like they were the target age group, and I was like, heck yeah, let's get them into it. And so that was their entryway to Star Wars. And like a couple years later, they asked me for like lightsabers and stuff, because apparently that was expected of me as their aunt.
I would think so. If you were my aunt, I would be like, where's my lightsaber?
Obviously. And how could I say no to them? They have lightsabers now. Like, what am I going to do? Tell them no, I'm going to arm my nieces. That's what I'm going to do. And so it's just like, it's so fascinating to see, like, through kids, but also even through like a lot of the older folks who are joining fandom. Like, some of them are coming in. I've met 40-year-old sequel trilogy fans who are just now like expanding into the prequels because it took them this long to find something to like hook onto. And I think Star Wars storytelling even now is expanding with the Bad Batch. I find it to be a radically different type of show than like Clone Wars. Like, Clone Wars, for all of the themes that were like, this isn't for kids, it was for kids. Rebels was for kids. The Bad Batch is for maybe older kids who have already followed a little bit of Star Wars and like are ready for a more mature story. So yeah.
And I mean, big credit to Filoni and the showrunners, because, to your point, I mean, I watch it as an adult, and the Bad Batch wiping out, or Crosshair wiping out Saw Gerrera's camp, the women, the children, like, holy crap, that's dark. But my son, it was like, that was a good action show. So again, multiple layers, which is why Star Wars continues to work, I think. And you're right, Bad Batch, it does kind of, it rubs me a little bit the wrong way sometimes, just because I'm on Twitter, so I have to be irritated about something, I guess. So I'll pick this. When people call Bad Batch Clone Wars season 8, it's related, but I to your point, I feel like it's a completely, it feels like it's a different tone, maybe is the right word.
Yeah. And I think I'm really excited for the potential of season 2, because I think the one thing that a lot of Star Wars stories suffer from in like their introductory phase or season, and like this is one of the things that the High Republic has avoided, is Forrest Gump syndrome, I want to say. Like, I have enjoyed every single cameo, every reference. I love that stuff. I eat it up. I am the fan that service is for. But like, I get that, like, sometimes when Star Wars stories need to find their sea legs, they have to attach and rely on things that we know to establish like characters as more familiar. So I think there's a lot of potential in season 2 that we're going to see play out, because I think I mean, like, I do my best to stay out of Twitter arguments and the opinions of others, because I love being young and beautiful, and I but I've seen that sentiment going on where it's like, oh, this is filler, oh, this character is guesting, oh, there's too many cameos. And I think that's like, as a Star Wars fan, I feel like I kind of expect that, you know, like I expect that first season to be like, this is going to be a little wonky, but like, now that we know these people, now that these characters, their initial arc is completed, it's time to buckle in, because you're going to spend a lot of time with them and it's going to be intense.
This is Matt from Blue Panther Milk Co., and you are listening to Around the Galaxy.
You don't have, like, I think we feel like we have to love everything. I remember I've used Metallica as my example before, but I'm going to use Rush as my example here because I'm such a big Rush fan. I've been a big I see a bass behind you. There's a bass over here. We should, before we're done, we'll jam. It'll be great. 2 basses. Everybody wants 2 bass players jamming.
That's exactly. That's what everyone wants on a live broadcast. Right. It's going to sound amazing.
It's going to be awesome. No, but I remember as a teenager, when a new Rush album came out, I felt like I had to love it. Whether I loved everything about it or not, I felt like I have to love this. This is because they're mine, and this is my thing, and this is my. It becomes a part of your personality, and I think that's what kind of happens sometimes with Star Wars. Is like, it has taken me. What am I on, episode 129 or something with this? It's taken me like 75 episodes to finally be like, all right, look, I didn't love Resistance. I can get to that point. But it's true. And again, my son enjoyed it because he loved the action and the style, and he was the right age 3 years ago or whenever that came out. And it caught him in that way. And I think there is that we need to kind of let go of that I'm going to love everything sort of perspective, because you're not. And I think people, I mean, if you add up the number of hours of Star Wars content, and then you bring in the books and the comics and the video games, you can't love all of that. It's just that's not realistic.
I think I once compared Star Wars to like a Sizzler buffet, where like if you go in and you like load your plate up with ice cream and then you complain that there's broccoli on the buffet table, you just kind of look silly, you know?
Right.
It's like, just take your ice cream. It's the thing you want. Like, I'm sure there's a broccoli lover who will like that broccoli. You don't even have to think about that broccoli. You can just.
That's a really good way to put it. You were saying at the start about sort of the fanfic, and interesting that you, and I know that with the looking for Leia and just following you online and some, you're very attuned to a lot of sort of the female gaze of Star Wars and some of that perspective. But I want to bring up an interesting comment that you made right at the beginning, that women were writing fanfic back before even the prequels. So what I want to ask you is, why do people think that women now are just getting into Star Wars since The Last Jedi? Like, there's this commentary that is, or a conversation that goes on that is just simply not true.
Yeah, I feel like it's an age-old conversation of fandom. And I think it's because all of these spaces, and especially like in the louder, like in forums and stuff, a lot of them were male dominated. You know, I grew up in the era that was between not having internet and having internet. Mm-hmm. So I saw that shift happen like in real time when I was like 12 years old on like nerd forums and stuff. And like I think it's just about like broadening who's in your space in the first place, because you'll notice that there are divides in fandom, and like, you know, where certain people of certain genders and stuff hang out, because they're, you know, a lot of us gravitate toward people who are like us, who share our experiences, because it's safer that way. Mm-hmm. And you know, it's just more fun. But yeah, I think with like with any fandom. Like, and you brought up like rock and stuff. Like I grew up like with pop and punk and classic rock and all of these different like facets of music. Like my dad had me doing classical and jazz on trombone growing up. So I have always been in spaces that in many ways were like male dominated. And I think it was just the perspective of this being male dominated because the only people who are getting the spotlight are dudes. You know, like when it was one of the things we wanted to tackle with Looking for Leia was like, we wanted to, because you see every Star Wars documentary is like some guy recounting like his, you know, extensive knowledge about Star Wars, not bashing that part, but it's always like some dude in the talking head. So we wanted to change that and turn the camera on to people who have always been here, who I'm sure like plenty of Star Wars fans of all genders, we're all aware that we've been here in fandom, especially if we've been to like conventions and events. And we wanted to like spotlight and say like, you know, we're here too, you know? And it was cool. Like, I mean, you learn stuff like that. I didn't know the history of, I learned about Star Trek fan history because I was learning about Star Wars fan history and like the birth of fanfic and who that came from, because zines and stuff have always been a female dominated like practice. Again, going back to rock, the first rock and music zines were made by women, and they're sitting in museums. You can't deny that women made those zines, and so like those practices spilling into fandom and like creating these like new stories even within the Star Wars universe for fans to consume have like always been part of what we make and who we are. And I think that the more that we realize that everybody's here, the more we realize that we all have this like, I think, endless supply of Star Wars fandom to draw our energy from.
Yeah. Is it damaging the female part of the fandom? Is it making it harder to be a woman fan, or is it just something that you just kind of deal with?
And I think if you are a marginalized fan of any sense, like the thing is that it's nothing new to people like us, you know,
right.
This is like this behavior, this vitriol, like all of this is just like, oh, it's a new generation. It's a new phase of the stuff we've been dealing with always. So I don't think it's damaging. I mean, the thing now is that like, more than anything, whenever somebody like, you know, tries to belittle me or something, I just kind of get louder. Right. It does. I think it's just because, you know, I'm older and stuff, but like it doesn't faze me as much. And I really admire like this new generation of Star Wars fans who love what they love passionately. And it doesn't matter if like you don't like what they like. They don't care. They'll just like throw a meme at you and go back to enjoying their lives. And I think that like if we as Star Wars fans just accept like that, you know, because this saga is so multifaceted, because there are hundreds of people and stories and like sources that make up Star Wars and our culture and our fandom, I guess, as a community, you know, if we learn that there are things for us, and if we learn that there are plenty of different people that are enriching like this fandom more than anything, I think like our experience as fans and as people will be a lot more peaceful and chill and happy.
That's such a great way to put it. And it is like, again, it's like, I didn't love Resistance. Doesn't mean I'm going to have to. If you're somebody who like my friend Claire Stribling, yours as well. She loves Kawaki and lizard monkeys. I don't get it, but God bless her. She loves it, and she's going to tell everybody about it. Yes. Everybody's going to know, and damn it, that's her thing. And God bless. That's awesome. And I think that's one of the advantages to Star Wars we talked about before, about it being around for 40 plus years. There's so much of it. If you just love stormtrooper outfits and that's your thing, awesome. If you want to get into, and that's what I love about Star Wars too, is it's fighting, like we talked about at the beginning. It's wizards and magic. It's like a heartwarming family tale. It's pure sci-fi, right? And so it's a little bit of everything. And if you can't find something in Star Wars that you like, that you're willing to kind of hold on to, maybe like you need something else. Maybe Star Wars isn't for you. And I would find that very hard to believe, though, if that there's not a part of storytelling that Star Wars offers that you can't hook up to.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's wild. Like, there's a Baby Yoda doll fandom. Like, it's just the fandom of the doll. Like, there are like Facebook pages filled with like people who like don't watch Star Wars, but they bought that Baby Yoda doll and they are going to put him in some funny baby clothes and take pictures of him. And that's like the entirety of the fandom, and I love it.
Right. That's all you need. What
so
do you got?
magical.
Look, I clearly have an issue with Star Wars helmets. That's my thing. That's this week.
I have a thing with Asajj Ventress that, like,
You do.
I really do. It's oh my god, it's really out of hand. There's like a small shrine behind me.
I saw your Ventress sabers and some covers and posters and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's like the great thing about Star Wars, and I think if we I think as fans, if we turn our focus to that more than anything else, that there is something that will make someone happy in Star Wars, and it may not be the same thing as you or me, but the fact that someone is having a good old time and not hurting anybody and just enjoying their thing. I mean, what more could we ask for as people,
100%.
as a community, you know?
Totally agree with that. And I think that's, maybe that's a good piece of advice that people should, like, if you don't agree with somebody, whether it's Star Wars or not, ask them why. But I think the challenge is you have to ask why and genuinely be willing to listen. You don't have to change your mind, right? Nobody, as somebody said on my show recently, nobody's going to go on Twitter and say, you know what, I want somebody to change my mind, because that's not going to happen. But
that's what you have to. I mean, I was thinking about this even when, with Marvel and the MCU, with movies like Black Panther and Thor Ragnarok. Those are two movies I've seen and heard about and talked about that, like, people who aren't Marvel fans love those movies, and that's their consumption of the Marvel universe. Like, they know through that lens what the universe looks like. And I think that as long as we I think empathy and perspective is something that if put into practice could make the world a lot better.
Yeah. No, and I think it's interesting too to remember, and I remind myself of this every time I'm about to get into a Twitter war, is that the percentage of people having conversations like you and I are having right now, and this isn't even like, we're not even getting into like super deep lore, but having conversations like this is like 1% of the people who watch Star Wars, right? Mm-hmm. It's most people. And I think this is the thing about Rise of Skywalker for me as a nerd. I wanted something different from Rise of Skywalker. I'm not gonna say I loved it or hated it. I wanted something else from it. Yeah. But I remember walking out of it with my wife's family and other friends of mine, and they were like, that was the best Star Wars movie I've seen in years, and that blah, blah, blah. And because that's the audience, and we forget, it's like the Marvel audience. It's people want to go watch, comic book heroes fight for 2 hours and eat some popcorn, and that's it.
Yeah.
So.
I agree. I mean, like, that's kind of what I sort of accepted that about the sequel trilogy from the beginning, was that, like, I like this. I love the characters. I'm not going to, like, put down anything. I don't really, like, my complaints are nuanced and complicated and not made for the internet. And I had fun, but it was just like, oh, I can tell, like, this isn't for me. And that's okay, because I have the Clone Wars, because I have the prequels, because I have, Return of the Jedi, my favorite Star Wars movie ever. Don't care what anyone's opinions are. Like, it's that kind of stuff, like, there's something for everyone. And yeah, I mean, take my Sizzler ice cream and go.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Joe Barksdale, and you're listening to Around the Galaxy.
What are you looking forward to in the Star Wars world right now? There's so many things coming up. Kathleen Kennedy dropped 100 different things on us back in November, December. Of all the things that we know, what's got you like, I can't wait for that to happen?
Well, first and foremost, I'm really excited for Andor. I was just looking at a little art piece of Cassian that I have framed right off camera. And I can't wait to see his story. I love Rogue One. It's one of my top Star Wars movies, and Cassian was such an intriguing character, and I really want to see where he came from and what his story was about. So every time we get even like the smallest minuscule like crumb of Cassian news, I kind of flip out. I'm also really excited for Obi-Wan. Like, I just know that it's gonna burn my heart into the ground and like stomp on it and bury it in the sand. And I'm ready for it. I'm ready.
Yeah, it's it's so funny, and this has been the case for everything, honestly. And again, maybe this is because Star Wars has been a part of my life since I was 7 years old. But I can safely say a lot of the things that have been announced, I've been like, okay, and then that happens, and I'm like, oh my god, that was amazing.
Yeah.
I say even the Mandalorian, I was excited, but I was like, yeah, okay, that should be cool. I mean, he looks cool, but man, it blows me away. Bad Batch, I was like, yeah, they were neat in Clone Wars, but do we need it? And I like it. I like it a lot. And so when I heard about both Andor and Kenobi, and it's funny because I'm with you. Those are probably my top two things right now as well.
Mhm.
Andor, I was like, he was a great character, but what can I possibly find out? And then as things you start to think about it, it's great. And my gosh, Anakin and Obi-Wan in the Kenobi series.
Oh man, dude, I mean, like that connection, that story, like the bond between Anakin and Obi-Wan is like one of the most important things in the Star Wars saga. It's one of the most, it's one of the biggest catalysts for like who Anakin became and who Obi-Wan became, and thusly who Luke and everyone else became. And so yeah, I'm so excited for that. I'm excited for Clone Wars flashbacks, like that I hope we get. Oh man, can you imagine like Ewan and Hayden in the armor and everything?
That's, if I see Obi-Wan in the white clone armor, the Clone Wars armor, I'm gonna lose my mind.
I'm gonna propose to my TV. They had like, so there, what was it for Battlefront? There were like those really nice illustrations of them in the Clone Wars armor, and there's also like a special edition Thrawn Alliances that had like Anakin in his Clone Wars armor, and just like those images are like burned into my head forever as like the most beautiful I've ever seen Anakin and Obi-Wan look. Gosh. So I'm hoping that we get like Clone Wars flashbacks, that we get like flashbacks with Rex and flashbacks with Cody, which I think would be so cool. Like, I'm not hoping the whole series is flashbacks, but like I know in order to hurt my feelings, there needs to be at least one Clone Wars flashback. So
yeah, I think there's got to be, right? I mean, they just hired that deep fake guy, right? So de-age like in masterful ways would be amazing. Matthew here in the chat said that he wants the Lando series, and that's one of those ones that I keep forgetting about, but that has so much potential as well.
Oh, absolutely. And that I saw that comment and it immediately made me think of the Charles Soule Lando comic miniseries from a few years back, and how much I absolutely loved it. So yeah, I fully agree. A Lando series would be, because Lando knows everyone. Like, Lando is one of those characters where like you could feasibly Forrest Gump the crap out of that series, and it would be like, well, that's just because Lando knows everybody. Like,
right. Yeah, he was there. He
was there. Like, he knows everyone. He's like everybody's friend or enemy. So like I think that would be so cool. And like, I think I speak for a lot of Star Wars fans when I say I love like the Star Wars underworld. Like, I grew up with like, KOTOR and the Old Republic, where like you would be going to a lot of planets that had like, slummy places in it. And so I love bounty hunters and like and the criminals of the Star Wars galaxy. So Lando, obviously hiring so many of them would be fantastic. I
love the possibility of a Lando show where one week he's like, he's flying a brand new multi-billion credit ship, and the next episode he's just like waking up in a alley somewhere in Coruscant or something, because he's been through it all. And it's funny, I when you think about characters who've just seen it all and lived it all, I mean, the fact that he's him and Wedge are the only two that survived all 9 episodes.
Yeah, Wedge even outlived his son. That was the thing about Rise of Skywalker that threw me off. Was I read Resistance Reborn before Rise of Skywalker, and so I knew about the relationship between Wedge and now I forgot his name. Snap. And so like it was just like weird seeing that edit, because I was like, oh no, your son just died and you just got here.
Yeah.
Sorry, your adult son is dead.
You missed it. Oh yeah. No, I think
You missed him by a minute.
So here's what I want to see from Rogue One, or not Rogue One, Rogue Squadron. I want it to be post Rise of Skywalker, and I want it to be here's my pitch. If you're listening, Lucasfilm, you can take this one for free. I want it to start with Wedge landing back on the rebel base after the celebration. Everybody's celebrating, and he's looking around for Snap, and somebody has to sit him down and tell him the bad news. And then we get sort of a history of Wedge. We get Wedge's story, sort of told in flashbacks about Rogue Squadrons through the years. That's my pitch. And it'll be heartbreaking, but it'll be a connection. And I think that's the one thing with that Star Wars is doing a really good job at, that I don't think we give it enough credit for as sweaty nerd fans like we are, who've seen every episode and read a lot of the books, are familiar with the stories. They've done a nice job of being able to introduce that stuff and sort of saying to, Pete and Katrina, hey, we know you read that book, so we're going to start that here. Mm-hmm. Whereas my dad, who loves Star Wars but has never done more than see Mandalorian and the movies, if you start it right and you show this pilot who lands, who from, I kind of remember him from the movies, and we make it about him and he lost his son. Oh my God, that's sad. Right. Yeah. So done right. I think that's one thing that they've done a really good. So people who complain about the cameo of the week are forgetting that it's the payoff for all the effort and time you've put into the series as a fan. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, that's the little chocolate that you're allowed. I noticed in the comments, JD brought up the Acolyte, which I am so excited for. I'm a really big fan of Leslie Headland. One of my favorite shows of hers is Russian Doll, which got greenlit for season 2.
Oh, it did. I did not hear that. That's great.
Season 2 is coming. I'm so excited, and I just love her character work. I think is what some of the best on TV these days, and I'm really excited to see her tackle what will be the first High Republic era-ish story. It's supposed to cap the end of that, so I'm excited to see who the Acolyte is, obviously, right. And see what this means for the High Republic era. It's exciting to me as a High Republic fan, because I've loved these books so far. I love the comics, and so it's having this dark fog between where I am right now and where the end is, and not knowing where the end is. I'm so excited for this, and I think that the way they're building up the High Republic and lacing in this show is very interesting.
I think that they're doing such a nice. It's a challenge, right? I mean, Feige, from a Marvel perspective, is the master of putting things. I mean, I just for some reason totally forgot all about Loki kicking the Tesseract, and they never followed up on that part of the story. They just kind of moved on with the rest of Avengers, and then now we're like, oh, that's right, that happened, and we get a 6-part show about it. So the challenge that they're facing right now is interconnecting these things, like the fact that now this episode will drop after we've seen the close of Bad Batch, so we don't have to speculate there. But the fact that Boba and Omega are connected in one way or another, who knows what we're going to see in the final episode, that lays itself out very nicely for Book of Boba Fett, which could lead back to Clone Wars and this and that and all these other connections. And that's what I love about Acolyte, is where's that going to fall? And by then, will we have maybe learned more about Palpatine? And is there a connection to sort of the original Sith, or the return of the Sith, or whatever? And and it's set in such an interesting time,
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited. I'm excited these days because I still have that enthusiasm for Star Wars that I've always had. I just, I have my select circles where I talk about it rather than in too many public forums. But it's exciting because I sit here thinking about, those connections and building my fan theories. One of my big ones right now is about Keith Trennis. who in Dooku Jedi Lost was, well, not her directly, but somebody named Master Trennis was named by Yoda as they were going through the Hall of the Lost 20, who were Jedi that left the Order or, for some reason or another. And Yoda calls Master Trennis's story a tragedy. And so I'm like, oh my God, is Keeve the Acolyte?
Yeah.
I have those fun conversations in my group chats and stuff, and it's still what makes being a Star Wars fan so much fun, because I could be wrong and I'm not going to be disappointed if I am, but if I'm right, it sure is going to feel great.
Well, and I think that's the challenge, and I've spoken about this with a number of guests, is this challenge of managing your own expectations and your own headcanon when things do or don't happen. I think that's why, and I've said it before, Last Jedi is one of my favorite Star Wars stories, although I don't watch the movie a lot because there's a lot to, it's not a popcorn munching movie. It's a great story. But the reason I walked out of it the first time I saw it disappointed was because in my head I had written the whole movie. Here's what's going to happen. This is going to happen. And of course we all got everything wrong. And I think that's the biggest challenge, especially, and I think maybe that's part of the missed opportunity with J.J. Abrams doing 2 of the 3 sequels is he's a set the snare sort of guy, but none of it really came through the way I wanted it to. But that being said, the real question here is, how do you manage your expectations? And because you and I, it sounds like we're the same. Like I know what's going to happen Friday in the Bad Batch, but I'm going to be totally wrong, right? In my head, I know what's going to happen is what I mean, but it's going to be wrong. So how do you manage it so that you're not like, that's not the way I expected it?
Well, I mean, there's the classic Jedi rule of non-attachment. I think applying expectations to outcomes that aren't within your hands will always open you up to disappointment, whether that's with your fandom or other people. I hate to be like you could rely on yourself only, but it's less about that and more about these are stories that we gravitate to because we love these storytellers. So at the end of the day, if you surrender your expectation, you're going to have a lot more fun watching it. And if you don't like it in the end, it's going to hurt less. You're going to care less. And so, yeah. And then whenever I get disappointed by a Star Wars story, I just open up a Google Doc and I write a fanfic, or I make a doodle or something. Do you know how much Asajj Ventress fan art I have because I wanted some things to happen? I have beautiful fan art of her being raised from the dead by Rey because I thought that might be a cool idea. That's what I do. That's how I blow off steam. You can log on to your favorite Star Wars RPG and just play a story out there. I think that we just need to stop it, and I don't want to preach to the fandom or whatever, but it's just healthier to to be okay with the fact that I have my fan theories, and if Keeve Trennis doesn't become this end all be all acolyte, I'm still going to be happy that I had these great stories to take in. The High Republic is an incredible project that I think is going so well, and I love that character and the cast, and so it's really no skin off my back if Star Wars didn't go that way. I still got a Star Wars, and I can, if I really want to fix it that bad, I can just write it out and get it out of my system.
No, it's true, and I think that's one of the things that's a challenge for fans, and which is why gatekeeping is such a ridiculous concept, because if you love the story, you have to trust the writers that are giving it to you. And you can stop anywhere along the line. You can be like, you know what? Original trilogy, that's all I needed. That's good. I'm happy with that. I wanted episodes 1 through 6. I'm good. I'm done with that. And you need to trust that's, I mean, look, I've never gotten into Doctor Who, but I know that there's people who don't love every direction that show went, but they trust that it's going in a direction that they'll be happy with. And that's kind of where it needs to go.
Yeah, exactly. So. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think that overall where Star Wars is right now is something I could have never dreamed up before as a kid. It's we have a theme park worth of Star Wars stuff now. Can you imagine growing up and being told someday you're gonna walk on a Star Wars planet and eat some Star Wars food?
Yep. It's an amazing thing. And I look at my kids and I'm like, you kids don't understand. You have it so good.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, yeah, like I think it's so funny. I was just like thinking about your fanfic, and I'm like, oh, you are to Maul as I am to Ventress. This is Katrina Dennis, and you are listening to Around the Galaxy.
So we have to hit Ventress, because it is, you and I, when we talked before the show, we're like, what are we gonna? Where do you want to go? And Ventress automatically poured out of your fingers.
My automatic response. What do you want to talk about, Ventress?
So what is it about this character that you just have attached? Because everybody, it's funny. Everybody's got my character. I'll tell you before I let you go, because I'm a bad host and that's the wrong way to do it. But the character that I've hooked into for some reason is Orson Krennic. Like he's a character that yes, I love. There's something about that character that I love. Maybe I'll cosplay as him one day. Who knows? But I love his. I think maybe it's because of the corporate world experience that I also have, is just watching. We've seen people, and we've been in that position where somebody has taken your win and gone with it, and it's just, his struggle is so real, I think. With whether it's, building a Death Star or, building a marketing plan. One of the, he's like, he got screwed, but he firmly believes he's right. And whether he got screwed or not is irrelevant. It's the way the game was played, and he lost the game. And it's fun to watch him. But so that's kind of where I come in on Krennic. Yeah. What drew you to Asajj Ventress, and what are some of your favorite things about her?
I mean, the first reason that I loved Ventress was that, and it was like the reason for her creation. She was created as this very interesting foil that brought about these challenges for Anakin and Obi-Wan that they'd never encountered before. Mm-hmm. Like in Clone Wars, she was that one villain. It was her, Grievous, and Dooku that were like, oh no, we need both Anakin and Obi-Wan here, because otherwise these guys are going to screw everything up. Like, they're going to mess it up. And to see this badass woman come out and be this important villain, who not only was an important villain, but she became this character who had a massive arc, I would say, for a supporting character in Clone Wars, where we saw her grow and change and kind of become this underdog vigilante, and that was my first exposure to a story like that. And it was so funny because that was so similar to the character Zuko in Avatar: The Last Airbender. I almost always compare their stories because they're very, very, very similar. They have these very direct drives when you meet them that are based entirely on proving themselves to someone who's abusing them, entirely on saying I'm better than you tell me I am, and she ultimately she becomes better than she was told by several people. And I really admire her. She's sexy, she's cool, she's got this she's more than just aha, I'm a villain. She has morals, and she grows as a character. And I mean, we explored that a little bit over on Space Waffles a couple of weeks ago, where her story, it kind of mirrors Anakin's in a weird opposite parallel way, because they're given similar choices and similar events at different points in their lives, and because of timing and who they are, they react differently, and their outcomes are radically different.
It's interesting because I like that a lot, because she almost, would you say she turned good in a way? I mean, it's hard to say, in a very gray area, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, I think she's one of those characters where her understanding of the Force, not just because of her experiences, but also her origins and Night Sister and what she learned from them. She's very much like Ahsoka, where she's not a Jedi or a Sith, but she's certainly better than she was when we met her. She's more aligned to the Force itself rather than the light or dark side of the Force. And I always think about like that one thing Yoda said to her in like the very first episode of Clone Wars, where he says, strong in the dark side you are, but not that strong. And it's a pretty sick burn, but it's also like, I always see that as Yoda saying like, this isn't your highest potential. And not necessarily saying being a Jedi is your highest potential, but what you're doing right now is not where you could do your best. Right.
And that, I think that in a way also is that's exactly the kind of thing that drove her. I mean, we saw it in Jedi Lost and that sort of thing. I do like that. And I think those tend to be some of the most interesting characters are the people who have something to prove, but mostly to themselves. Yes. Right. I mean, she's saying outwardly, I'm better than you think I am, but she's mostly saying it to herself. And that drives. Whereas Anakin, in a way, was saying it and he felt like he deserved it more than he had to earn it in a way. I think maybe that's the big difference between the two of them.
And I mean, like at their worst, they had that same perspective, but like, I feel like, and I don't want to say like, oh, Asajj had a harder life or Anakin had a harder life, but the experience and the timing of them, like it was like important to both of their stories. Like Asajj, where she comes from is a place of abandonment. She was surrendered by her people to like slavery. Her mother gave her away, however, unwilling she was. And then she lost that master. And then she lost her Jedi master, the man who saved her life, who changed it, who was going to make her a Jedi Knight. And so we see, I think the drive we see in Asajj when she gets to Dooku is like, you're not going to give me up. Like, you're not going to abandon me again. I'm going to prove to you that I'm good enough, not only to be here, but to be better than you someday.
Do you think we'll get to see her again in any form?
Yeah, dude. I definitely. Well, like it's like I think she's such a cool character that like whenever she's like brought up, whenever there's a new statue or like figurine, like everybody goes nuts. Like everybody loves Ventress. Like they don't talk about her a lot. I think they should, but I think everyone is excited every time we see Ventress. Like when we saw her on the Star Wars Celebration, like Clone Wars, the banner that like it encapsulated the saga. Like that was one of the pictures that got shared the most on social, because it was like her and Ahsoka right there in the middle of the image, like those two power hitting women of the Clone Wars, like together and depicted in such a beautiful way. Like I definitely think we're going to see her again. And I don't think she's going to stay dead because like, Maul rotted in the garbage for 10 years, built himself some spider legs and came back. Asajj is a magical witch who was like buried in a magical lake on her magical planet. It's kind of like, no, she's gonna come out. She's out. She's
just recharging those batteries.
Somebody just needs to show up and like power her out of there.
When they released the Black Series figure of her, I was like, yep, she's coming back. I don't know when, I don't know where, but she's coming back.
It's happening. It's definitely. And I'm so excited to be in alive to see it. Because I mean, like, and she's been featured in like stories. Recently she had the Certain Point of View story. Jodie Hauser did that great mini comic of hers. She showed up in, what was it? It was Cavan Scott who did the Vader's Castle series, or was it Charles? Yeah,
I think was that Charles? I know it was Cavan. It was Cavan.
It was Cavan, yeah, because he did Dooku Jedi Lost after that. And he's written a lot of Ventress. Like, I just think that we're seeing her. Like, it may be like a test of interest, but I also think it's just like, the creatives at Star Wars like playing with this character because she has this potential. She's a good storytelling vehicle.
Yeah. And we've seen Filoni likes to bring back characters also that have, it's almost bigger than a cult following, but she certainly has a very strong following. And when Thrawn came back, that was certainly a bone to the people who loved him, and he turned into such a great and important character. Who would you have play Asajj Ventress if she was in live action?
Okay, I do have a few different picks, but my absolute top right now is Tania Miller from The Haunting of Blythe Manor. She, and then also, oh man, my brain is like completely shutting down on this woman's name, but the woman who plays Okoye in the Marvel universe.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Who is it? I know who you mean.
Denai Guerrera. Yes.
Yeah.
Both of them, I think, not only do they have the physique, but the cheekbones to play Asajj Ventress. I think they would do a fantastic job. And I think like a live action depiction with them like as the face would be so cool to see. Like, I think there's a lot of really cool potential with her makeup to put in. Yeah.
Oh, those are great choices. I think she has to come back at some point. I think she does.
Absolutely. Great. She's just such a cool character. Like, talking about great characters coming back, like when Fennec Shand was put down in that first season of Mando, I was disappointed for 2 seconds, and then I was like, no, she's coming back. She's coming back. It's whatever. She's going to be back. My prediction at that time, because Boba came up to her in his little boots, was instead that it wasn't Boba, because I knew that Cobb had his armor at the time, and I thought it was Cobb Vanth coming up to her. And that was before Cobb was introduced. So I was like, oh, they're going to introduce Cobb Vanth. So like I almost got it right. So
you can take credit for it, I think, kind of, because who would have thought Cobb Vanth would make an appearance in live action? Holy cow!
Out of nowhere, and like I was, I just willed it into existence. No, I'm kidding.
Thanks to you.
Yeah, I mean, like if putting it out there in the universe makes it happen more, live action Asajj Ventress, played by Denai Guerrera or Tania Miller. Please and thank you, Mr. Filoni. There's like this great clip of Dave that I need to like unearth. It's like on my old computer, but it's him on a red carpet, and it's just the clip of him turning to the camera, and he says, "Well, never say never." And I was like, that's my reaction to everything in Star Wars. It's like, if I have a theory, I just think of Dave saying that, and I'm like, yeah.
It could happen. Sure.
It could happen.
Well, I mean, the fact that Felicity Jones was on the red carpet a couple days ago, and they asked her about Jyn Erso, she's like, never give up on Jyn Erso. You're like, wait a second.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, unless you see the body, and even then, I don't know if it matters. I think it's
Star Wars is like comics. Nobody's really dead. Like,
right. No one's ever really gone. Luke literally told us no one's ever really gone.
Exactly. If he needs to come back, he'll be a Force ghost. Like, they'll find a way. It's the Force. They can do whatever they want with it.
It's space magic. Anything can happen. No, you're right. And I guarantee I would love to see Asajj come back in the Ahsoka series, because it would be great to see them reconnect, right? Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I love their dynamic too. And I love, like, again, that's another thing that like very closely connected how Asajj reacted to Ahsoka being in trouble versus how Anakin reacted. Which, like, they both tried to help her in their own ways, but Asajj, I feel like Asajj did it in a slightly more organized way. She didn't even kill any clone troopers along the way. But I love their dynamic, because I feel like Ahsoka is one of the first people outside of Obi-Wan to go like, oh, you're not actually bad, you're just troubled. Like, right. You're not actually bad. You've just had a really awful life. And and I think like that is a big reflection of like how you see Ahsoka's empathy develop in the series, is like how she reacts to Ventress, like going from, calling her a bald banshee to like, this is my teammate now.
Yeah. I mean, what if they're building toward like an Avengers style thing where Ahsoka's out collecting people to go fight something, and she's got Sabine with her. She's going out to get Ezra. She's got to go get Asajj, and she's creating this super team of people who aren't Jedi, right? But they're all Force sensitive, and I don't know. It's hard to say if Sabine is or not, but she certainly knows her way around a lightsaber, right? So you could be creating a super team there.
I think so. There's
Suicide Squad in Star Wars.
There's this like great, I think it was El Fidel, don't quote me, but there's like this fantastic Star Wars fan comic where Ahsoka she's like called to Dathomir, and she goes to that lake that Ventress is buried in, and like Mother Talzin like possesses her body and raises Ventress from the dead. And
Wow.
Ventress like comes out and like has to like, you know, wear some like rebellion pilot uniform because there's no other clothes.
It's awesome.
It's cute. It's a really cool comic. And I mean, like, again, like that's the concept is like Ahsoka could easily bring Ventress back. Like some happening in the Force could just bring her back. Mother Talzin being a weird, funky Force ghost could just bring her back. So I think that in Star Wars, we have these like infinite possibilities with characters, because at the end of the day, it's like, it's space wizardry. Like how are you going to tell the Force no?
Right. And again, going back to that's what makes Star Wars so great is you have cool spaceships, you've got interesting technology, you've got cowboys and westerns, and you have magical space wizards, and it's all together in one yummy soup of Star Warsy goodness.
Yes. Yeah. There's something for everyone. I love Star Wars fandom because, you know, we have friends that like express their fandom through putting together like some of the best outfits I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
And we have fans who express their fandom through like, you know, their figurine collection or through playing tabletop RPGs. And I think that the great thing about Star Wars fandom that like I think more people should just love and take advantage of is that there's always a place for you. Right. Not every place is made for you, and that's okay.
It's perfect. I love it. So Katrina, where can people find you online to keep up with this great thinking? That I love that you're not getting sucked into the potential to be negative. You're just like, you know what? I'm going to stay positive. I'm going to keep my Star Wars happy hat on, and I'm just going to keep going because it is so tempting to get into the crap. So I'm so glad. Yeah. I'm so glad. I've learned a lot from you in this last hour, which is great. So where can people follow you to make sure that we keep this positivity going?
Thank you so much. You guys can find me anywhere online if you look for O Katrina. That's OHCATRINA. And I host 3 podcasts now. One of them is A Fight Club Far Far Away, which you can follow at Fight Club FFA on Twitter. Mm-hmm. And then I also co-host Padro Pascal with my dear friend Rachel Leishman. It's a rundown of actor Pedro Pascal's filmography. And then I meet up with my friend Kayla every once in a while to host Y Tu Banda Tambien, which is pop culture from a Latinx point of view.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, great. Well, thank you so much for joining us. This has been so much fun.
Yes, I've had so much fun. Thank you for having me.
Well, that wraps it up for this episode of Around the Galaxy. If you had fun, please like, subscribe, share, and review it. If you really had fun and would like to be part of the live virtual audience, please check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/ATGcast. Make sure to follow us on Twitter or all your social media at ATGcast, and go to our website, atgcast.com, for more information about the show, merch, and all kinds of great links. Around the Galaxy is copyright 2021 Pete in the Seat Studios, and our music is by the band Silver Colored Knob, which can be found wherever you find music.
Thank you. I'll see you around the galaxy.
I like that.
See, you can use that. That's a freebie for you.
That's an extra.
Yeah.